Alright. Morning, everyone. Online students, I hope I'm audible. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Hemant. Right. So, previous lecture we had talked about the three phases of British capitalism. कौन से? Mercantile phase, industrial phase, and financial phase. Mercantile phase में what was the economic objective of the British? Profit maximization and creation and maintenance of a monopoly. Right. During the industrial phase क्या था? To extract raw material and flood the Indian market with British products. And financial phase में क्या objective था? To invest excess British capital into India, right? So in accordance with these shifting objectives, their colonial policies, that is their political, economic, administrative, social and cultural policies also changed. वो समझ में आ गया था पूरा framework? ठीक है. Next, we have to talk about the important developments in 18th century India. We'll be getting a brief glimpse of 18th century India. What are the important developments that took place? Firstly, the downfall of the Mughal Empire. Secondly, the rise of regional kingdoms. And lastly, the early victories of the British against their rivals, right? So the beginning of British ascendancy. Right? And with respect to the first theme, the downfall of the Mughal Empire, if a question is asked, where do you think it is likely to be asked from? It is going to be out primarily the factors responsible, the causes of the downfall of the Mughal Empire. So batao, what were the reasons responsible for the decline of the Mughal Empire? Weak governors. Acha. What else? No thoughts. Wars. Acha, they were defeated. Okay, what else? Take the emergence of superior European presence in the subcontinent. What else? A wrong strategy or religious tussle. ठीक है. Or if there is one man who can be blamed for the decline, कौन होगा वो? Aurangzeb, his mistakes, his wrong policies. What else? देखो, earlier ना, history was seen through the lens of personalities, especially rulers and the policies that they adopted, right? Now, so from this lens, who is considered to be the real founder of the Mughal Empire? Akbar. By adopting a tolerant policy, he was able to create the necessary goodwill to be able to create, maintain and expand an empire in North India, right? Further, his administrative rationalization, creation of a new class of elite bureaucrats whose interests were aligned with the interests of the state meant that the empire was always going to receive the services of the best minds of that period. इसका radical contrast कौन है? Aurangzeb. Right? Now, Aurangzeb is perceived by the early section of historians to be the antithesis to Akbar. So Akbar was the founder of the Mughal Empire, the real founder of Mughal power, and Aurangzeb, despite his great capabilities, was seen as, or was shown as the person who destroyed the Mughal Empire, right? So one important factor is the mistakes of Aurangzeb. क्या है ये औरंगजेब की गलतियां? Firstly, his bigoted religious policy. His policy of persecuting non-Muslims, destruction of temples, forcible conversions, etc. The declaration of jihad, religious war on multiple occasions, the carrying out of mass enslavement of defeated people with the purpose of punishing them or giving them the choice, convert or be enslaved, convert or die, right? These kinds of things. So what is going to be the result of all this? Is he going to be able to continue receiving the goodwill of the majority of the subject population which was non-Hindu, or will he lose their trust? He lost their trust, right? Another factor, yeah, Aurangzeb's Deccan policy, right? So was Aurangzeb the first Mughal ruler to become interested in establishing control over the Deccan region? No, the Mughals had been trying since the period of Akbar himself. So piece by piece, Akbar and his successors, first Jahangir, then Shah Jahan, and finally Aurangzeb, they had brought more and more of the Deccan region under their direct control, right? However, what all of them had avoided was establishing direct control over the entire territory of the Deccan, right? So what had happened at Akbar के दौर में? Which part of the Deccan had been taken over by the Mughals? Ahmednagar, right? During Jahangir's reign, very minimal success was registered and Berar was taken over. During Shah Jahan's reign, Bijapur and Golconda had been defeated, but they were restored. So they had been given their independence back upon the acceptance of certain conditions placed by the Mughals, right? So Shah Jahan had carried out the subjugation of Bijapur and Golconda. And very strategically and quite wisely, he had avoided annexing the territory of Bijapur and Golconda. Why? Because in this region, there was another power that was rising. Con? The Marathas, right? Now, Marathas were a local power and अगर मराठास को राइज करना था तो किसको कंटेस्ट किसे कंटेस्ट करना पड़ेगा? अदर लोकल राइवल्स, दैट इज बीजापुर एंड Golconda. So Shahjahan's strategy was to get Bijapur and Golconda on his side so that they can act as a check on the growing power of the Marathas, right? So he envisaged using the local powers of Bijapur and Golconda as a buffer against the Marathas. What did Aurangzeb do? In 1679, he declared jihad against Bijapur and Golconda and invested a large army in this region, right? resulting ultimately in the capitulation of Bijapur and Golconda. And Aurangzeb ne kya kiya? Did he reimpose Mughal oversight and Mughal suzerainty, or did he annex the territory of Bijapur and Golconda? He annexed their territory. ठीक है, तो conquest of Bijapur and Golconda was carried out by Aurangzeb. 1686-87 में ये टास्क इसने कंप्लीट कर दिया. तो इनिशियली he was quite happy with this development. However, he suddenly started to realize his mistake. What has he done inadvertently? किसको स्ट्रेंथन कर दिया है इस रीजन में इसने? मराठास को, क्योंकि ये चेक इनके पावर के ऊपर से हटा दिया गया है. तो कैन ही रेस्ट assured that the Deccan is now in his control, or will he have to keep a large military presence in the Deccan? He'll have to keep a large military presence in the Deccan, right? किसको चैलेंज करने के लिए? मराठास की पावर को चेक करने के लिए. Is this much clear? अच्छा. Further, what had he thought? That the Mughal Empire, with all its might, its overwhelming military weight, is going to be able to easily overcome the Marathas. They were, after all, a small regional power at this point of time. But this was a major miscalculation. क्यों? Because he had misunderstood the nature of the Maratha struggle for political independence. उसको क्या लगा था? That the Marathas are like any other ordinary power. They are a political and military power. But what was the reality? The Marathas had developed a strong sense of primordial nationalism. ठीक है, तो the Maratha movement was not simply a political and military movement. It was also a powerful and popular social and cultural movement. So even if the Maratha state could be overwhelmed politically and militarily, are the people also going to submit, or will they keep on fighting? They will keep on fighting. And therefore, the task for the Mughals after the conquest of Bijapur and Golconda, is it going to be a rather easy one, या फिर will it be a persistent uphill task? Persistent uphill task, क्योंकि हो सकता है वो एक किले को कॉन्कर कर ले, बट जो वो किला जो एरिया को कमांड कर रहा है, they'll never be able to pacify it. And Marathas are going to use this. They are going to use their popularity to harass the Mughals. The Mughals, once they got into the Deccan region, they were not able to come out of it. ठीक है, तो रिजल्ट क्या हुआ इसका? That for the second half of his reign, for the next 25 years, Aurangzeb could not leave the Deccan at all, right? The Mughals had to maintain a huge armed presence in the Deccan region. What is going to be the result of this? What is the core of the Mughal Empire? Core of the Mughal Empire was in the North India. So North Indian affairs, is the emperor going to have a good grasp on it, or will he start neglecting it? He'll start neglecting it. So जो core है, जो core heartland है empire का, वहां पे administrative breakdown शुरू हो जाएगा. And साथ में Deccan का जो campaign है उसको fund करने के लिए they will require a lot of money also, right? So it was a constant drain on the empire's resources. Further, was Aurangzeb able to secure a clear victory? No, the Marathas failed to submit. Aurangzeb was unable to overpower them completely. And in fact, the Mughals faced huge reversals and major setbacks over here. They encountered major military losses as well throughout this entire period. So, till now, what was the perception about the Mughals? That on the battlefield उनको कोई हरा नहीं सकता है, right? Ever since the time of Babur, they had been registering victory after victory after victory. So they were surrounded by an aura of invincibility that they can never be defeated. The Marathas shattered this aura. They shattered this myth. Okay? So this was a huge loss of prestige for the Mughals as well. So while Aurangzeb was able to momentarily suppress the Marathas, overtake their empire, overtake their kingdom, but Aurangzeb himself knew that the empire had started to crumble before his eyes, simply because of the type of drain that the Deccan campaign was placing on his empire. Is this clear? समझ में आया है? Then another mistake made by Aurangzeb, his flawed Rajput policy. Right? What was the nature of Akbar's Rajput policy? Did he maintain friendly terms with the Rajputs or not? Friendly terms pe the. In fact, Akbar had ensured that the Rajputs became part and parcel of the imperial framework. He created a system based on trust and mutual interests, right? So, Rajputs had started to serve the empire and its interests. All the important military campaigns of Akbar, who was actually fighting? It was the Rajputs. So Rajputs had served as the sword arm of the Maratha Empire. Had it not been for Akbar's success in accessing the largest military market that existed in India at that point of time, possibly he would not have registered the type of military success that he did during his tenure, right? And after Akbar, his successors, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, etc., did they maintain the same policy or did they reverse this policy? They maintained this policy. Reversal कब होता है? औरंगजेब के अंडर होता है. Now, there were certain terms and conditions to this relationship. It was obviously a reciprocal relationship. The Mughals wanted something from the Rajputs. They were ready to give them something in return. So, what did they give them in return? A few things. First of all, they guaranteed them internal autonomy. That you are going to be part of the empire, but you are going to be a unique part of the empire. Unlike other regions where the Mughals used to send their governors, सूबेदार्स, Rajput territories या Rajput kingdoms के ऊपर कोई सूबेदार बैठाया जाएगा? There is not going to be any actual, you can say, Mughal governor governing the Rajput territories. So these people are going to be able to make all decisions, set internal policy in accordance with their wishes. The Mughals are not going to intervene in the issue of Rajput succession also, right? So after the death of a ruler, who is going to succeed, what are going to be the internal dynamics? Mughals are going to be a far away presence over here, right? So they are not going to personally intervene. So autonomy, non-intervention, and साथ में the Rajputs also wanted religious freedom, that they'll not be forced to give jizya, they'll not be asked to convert, no checks are going to be placed upon their religious rights, pilgrimages को restrict नहीं किया जाएगा, temples को destroy नहीं किया जाएगा. So these were the kinds of things that the Rajputs wanted, and they received quite generously from the Mughals also. What did Aurangzeb do? Exactly the opposite. He raised the demand of jizya. He tried to intervene in the succession issue at a prominent Rajput state, that of Marwar, Jodhpur में का जो succession issue था, वहां पे इसने intervene करने की कोशिश करी. So what was the result of this? Are the Rajputs going to honor the centuries-old deal that they had with the Mughals? या फिर वो भी वापस ले लेंगे कि भाई you are not holding up the end of your bargain, why should I? So they also rebelled. So for the next 20 years, the Rajputs kept on rebelling against the Mughals. So what was the result of this? First of all, the Mughals lost the services of a majority of the Rajputs. Secondly, they had to invest money and manpower to suppress or control this rebellion. So that was already quite rare. The empire was already militarily and financially stressed. So this was another major blow to them. ठीक है? So these are some of the mistakes of Aurangzeb. I hope this is clear. Sure. Second factor, the crisis of personality which emerged in the empire following the death of Aurangzeb. Right? Now, what was the nature of the Mughal administration? उसका administrative setup कैसा था? What were its qualities? Was it a decentralized setup or a highly centralized one? It was a highly centralized one. And पूरा का पूरा system किसके around pivot करता था? the emperor, right? So Badshah was considered to be the fulcrum of the entire system of imperial administration. He was not only the executive, legislative, and judicial head, the military head, but under Akbar, the office of the empire had been transformed into something more. So he was supposed to be the moral guide, almost a spiritual leader of the empire, right? So, what kinds of qualities would be expected of a Mughal emperor? पढ़ाई में अव्वल नंबर, लड़ाई में अव्वल नंबर, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में अव्वल नंबर. He should have a good grasp on finances. He should have a good grasp on the economy. He should be culturally sensitive, etc. These kinds of things would be required. However, what was the quality of Aurangzeb's successors? Did they possess all these qualities या फिर लल्लू थे? लल्लू निकले हैं, right? So this is what we mean by the crisis of personality. Weak successors of Aurangzeb. Now, it is not that unworthy emperors had not sat on the throne before Aurangzeb. Take for example Jahangir's case. Addicted to opium, given to the luxuries of life, used to spend most of his time either in his studio making paintings or out in the jungle hunting, right? Who was actually governing in his stead? His wife Noor Jahan, empress, or capable ministers, right? So even if the emperor lacked some of the qualities or the capability or willingness to actually perform his duties, he was always surrounded by capable heads who were able to prop up the emperor and his imperial system. However, by this point of time, this had also started to change. See, by this point of time, जो मुगल nobility था, its relationship with the Mughal Empire, Mughal Imperium, it had started to go sour, right? It had started to go bitter. Why? Because once again, reciprocal relationship tha. Their interests were supposed to be aligned with each other. However, under Aurangzeb's reign, what had happened? He had demanded more and more from the nobility and given them back less and less. So they had started to lose faith in the Mughal Empire and the promises that they made. Is this much clear? So, what are they going to start feeling? That are the interests of the emperor and my interests one and the same, or should I pursue my own personal interest? My own personal interest. So, while a number of capable noblemen, wazirs, etc., did exist in the Mughal Darbar after Aurangzeb also, instead of seeking to serve the imperial interests, they are going to be looking out for their own interests. Okay? So, this is what we mean by crisis of personality. All right. Now, this, however, is the old way of looking at things, traditional way of looking at things. Why? Because we are seeing historical change through which lens? Through the institutional lens or the personal lens? Through the personal lens. So there is one particular theory which governs this point of view, that is known as the great man theory. So earlier historians used to believe that great men pull the levers of history and affect change. However, more recently the trend has shifted, and अब क्या belief emerge हो रहा है? That these so-called great men are not actually always in control. It is the circumstances that govern their decisions, that dictate their fates. So historians have started to move away from this particular perspective to look for the institutional, other material factors responsible for historical change. Okay? So in this scenario, certain other factors come to light. Factors such as the Mansabdari crisis, the Jagirdari crisis, and the agrarian crisis, along with टेक्नोलॉजिकल बैकवर्डनेस। ठीक है, and these factors can be placed among the institutional factors responsible for the decline of the Mughal Empire. Now, dealing with the first one, कौन सा है? Mansabdari crisis. So, what do you mean by Mansabdari? पढ़ा है स्कूल में मुगल्स के बारे में, तो आई एम श्योर यू मस्ट बी अवेयर ऑफ दिस। नहीं पढ़ा है? अच्छा, ठीक है। तो मनसब या फिर मनसबदार जो था, इट वॉज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाई अकबर इन ऑर्डर टू रिकॉन्स्टिट्यूट हिज नोबिलिटी। जो एम्पायर के एलिट्स हैं उनको एक सिस्टम में, एक हायरार्की में रिकॉन्स्टिट्यूट करने के लिए उसने ये इंस्टीट्यूशन इंट्रोड्यूस किया था। इट वॉज डन इन ऑर्डर टू रिकॉन्स्टिट्यूट द नोबिलिटी इनटू अ मेरिट बेस्ड हायरार्की इन विच, अब मेरिट किस चीज पे डिपेंड करेगा? their service to the empire, and in accordance with the amount of service that can provide to the empire, they are going to be rewarded, right? So the relationship between the loyalty and capability of a mansabdar is going to be directly proportional to his promotions, right? So whoever is able to serve best the empire's interests, they are going to be rewarded in that proportion. So it was also done in order to do what? Align the interests of the nobility with the interests of the empire. So these are some of the essential qualities. Ab, what was the nature of the relationship between the empire and his mansabdars? Theoretically, it was a personal relationship and a reciprocal relationship. The mansabdars were personally answerable to the emperor, and the emperor was the one who rewarded them in return for loyal service. So the Mansabdari system was designed to create a personal relationship, personal, reciprocal relationship between Mansabdars and the emperor. Is this much clear? So, in order to ensure that the Mansabdars are personally loyal, forever loyal to the emperor, what does the emperor need to ensure? एक तो पर्सनालिटी एकदम धाकड़ होनी चाहिए, सो दैट द एम्परर कैन इवोक बोथ फियर एंड लव इन द हार्ट ऑफ द मनसबदार। ये समझ में आ जाना चाहिए कि इफ आई डिसप्लीज द एम्परर, आई लूज माय टाइटल्स, आई लूज माय लैंड्स, मे बी आई इवन लूज माय हेड, राइट? दैट इज वन थिंग. And secondly, that the emperor should never let a loyal servant to go back home empty handed, that he should proportionally reward the mansabdars in return for loyal service. तो this, ये जो दो क्वालिटीज है ना, ये हमेशा इस रिलेशनशिप का जो फंक्शनल एस्पेक्ट है उसको सस्टेन करने के लिए जरूरी होंगे. However, after Aurangzeb, क्या एम्परर्स की पर्सनालिटी ऐसी थी कि एम्परर का मान लीजिए आपके घर में लेटर आए तो आप उसको पढ़ने के पहले उठ के खड़े हो जाएं कि नहीं बहुत रिस्पेक्ट से पढ़ना होगा? नहीं। तो दी emperors after Aurangzeb had weak wills and weaker personalities. They were not able to evoke that sense of fear or that sense of love among the Mansabdars. That is one thing. And secondly, gradually, because of the financial crunch that the Mughal Empire had started to face from Aurangzeb's period onwards, the emperors were not in a position to routinely reward loyal service. So the Mansabdars are not going to feel loyal towards the emperor. ठीक है? तो what is the idea here? That breakdown क्यों होता है? The weak successors of Aurangzeb were neither able to command respect nor able to reward service. So the relationship started to break down. Clear? What is going to be the result of this on the Mansabdars themselves? See, they have lost confidence in the emperor. That emperor is no longer an impartial, a fair actor, a rational actor. Emperor is no longer in power. His strings are being pulled by puppet masters. That is one thing. तो अब क्या करेंगे ये? Will they seek to personally appeal to the emperor कि बादशाह सलामत मेरी बात मान लीजिए, मैं आपका बहुत वफादार नौकर हूं? नहीं करेगा, राइट? तो the Mansabdars are going to pool their resources. See, Akbar had created an international aristocracy. So it included people from various backgrounds, various regions, various cultures. तो कौन कौन से इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट्स थे इसमें? Turanis, people of Turkish origin. Mughals themselves were of Turkish origin. Iranis, कौन? People of Persian origin, Persian heritage. Afghans, people of Afghan origin. Hindustanis, कौन है ये? They're also known as 𝐂𝐭𝐻. These were Indian Muslims, right? Rajputs, Deccanis. So as Mughal presence expanded in the Deccan region, the local nobility was also integrated into the Mansabdari. And later on, especially during the reign of Aurangzeb and Shah Jahan, a large number of Marathas also entered imperial service. Right? Now remember, after Aurangzeb, the functional relationship between the individual Mansabdars and the emperor has broken down. तो अब क्या करेंगे ये? The Turanis are going to band together. The Iranis are going to band together. So are the Afghans, Hindustanis, Rajputs, Deccanis, and Marathas. And they are going to band together into exclusive rival groups. क्यों? क्योंकि लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज हैं, उसके लिए लड़ाई करनी है, एंड these groups are going to start feeling that only my group can look after my interest. So what was the game over here? रबर स्टैंप किसके हाथ में है अभी भी? एम्परर के हाथ में है, तो ऑल एग्जीक्यूटिव एक्शन, ऑल स्टेट लार्जेस, ऑल इंपॉर्टेंट अपॉइंटमेंट्स, ऑल द प्रॉफिटेबल जागीर्स, they can be given to the referent mansabdars only through royal decree, royal फरमान के थ्रू ही हो सकता है. तो each of these groups are going to start fighting against each other for what? To establish their control over the emperor, कि emperor हमारी मुट्ठी में होना चाहिए. And if one of these groups succeeds in getting control over the emperor, what are the other groups going to try and do? Undermine the emperor, get him replaced if possible, kill the emperor. So what kind of a political rhythm is going to be introduced? Not only puppet rulers, but deep political instability is going to be introduced. समझ में आया है? तो रिजल्ट क्या होगा? In fighting, among the nobility, the emergence of puppet rulers, and persistent political instability. Is there going to be any real winner in this game? हो सकता है some people may be able to get the emperor of their choice on the throne for some period of time, but the likelihood of the survival of such an emperor is going to be minuscule. Why? Because everybody else is going to be ready to topple him. Therefore, some of the most ambitious and capable nobles of this period learned something. क्या? नहीं, not corrupt. Corruption तो चलो ठीक है. Apart from that, why should I continue playing this game in which I am certain to lose in the end? Why not strike out on my own, right? Mughal Emperor, its days are already numbered. It is ultimately going to break apart. Either I can foolishly attempt to keep it intact, or I can grab a huge chunk of it and declare independence, become independent. So the process started with Bengal. It became an autonomous region of the Mughal Empire. In name, it remained part of the Mughal Empire, but functionally, it was acting completely independently of the Mughal Empire. This was followed by Awadh, and then by Hyderabad. Okay? So all these three of the most important regions of the Mughal Empire broke away from it. So result क्या होगा? Political fragmentation. So are you seeing now how part by part the Mughal Empire is being torn apart? तो कौन सा crisis है? This is the Mansabdari crisis. Related to this crisis is the Jagirdari crisis. जागीर क्या था? It was a parcel of land that used to be temporarily assigned to the officers of the Mughal Empire as payment for their service. So the idea was not that land ownership was being transferred, the right to collect revenue from that piece of land that was being transferred to the Mughal officials. Mughal officials को क्या बोलते थे? Mansabdars, right? So they were the rank holders in the Mughal Empire. Now, Mansabdars were of two types. नकदी मनसबदार्स, नगद मतलब cash. So these were lower ranking mansabdars who were paid cash salaries, and higher ranking mansabdars would be paid in the form of land revenue assignments known as jagir. So they would be called as जागीरदार्स. समझ में आया इतना? नाउ तो जागीर क्या हुआ? land revenue assignment given to Mughal officials in lieu of cash salaries. ठीक है? Now Jagirs were also of different varieties. One type of Jagir was known as the Tankha Jagir. Tankha means salary. So this was the type of Jagir that was transferred to the Mansabdar on a permanent basis or on a temporary basis. Temporary basis, right? So they were not made owners of land. They were simply given the right to collect revenue from this piece of land till the empire wishes them to have it. Okay, so till they keep serving the empire and his the emperor and his wishes. There was another type of Jagir that was given exclusively to Rajputs. कौन सा बोलते थे इसको? Watan Jagir. What is the meaning of the name Watan? Term Watan? कंट्री, होमलैंड जो होता है, ठीक है, उसको वतन बोलते हैं. दीज आर होमलैंड जागीर्स. This was a part of the special arrangement that the Mughals had with the Rajputs. You remember that complete internal autonomy, they'll be able to maintain control over their territories, no foreign interference is going to be there. So instead of giving Jagir to a Rajput Mansabdar located far away from his homeland, the state that he used to govern earlier as an independent ruler, that was reconstituted into a Watan Jagir and assigned to him. And the Rajputs, are they going to have temporary rights over this Jagir or permanent and hereditary rights? Permanent and hereditary rights they will have, right? Then there was another type of Jagir, Al-Mashrut Jagir. So what were the tasks of the Mansabdar? He was having both civil and military responsibilities. Now these Mansabdars were supposed to, out of the money that they were generating from the Jagirs, not only pay themselves, so they were supposed to keep one share of it for themselves. The rest of the money was supposed to be spent on civilian and military preparation, military administration, right? So they would this money would account for not only maintenance of law and order, repair works, construction of new infrastructure, provision of justice, etc. ये सब तो करेगा ही करेगा. साथ में he was supposed to maintain and repair the forts, expand the military presence, raise troops, pay them salaries, maintain a contingent of horses, elephants, camels, etc. वो काम भी करना होता था इसको, ठीक है. Now, so all this money is going to come from the Jagir that he has been assigned. During war, some of the Mansabdars would be sent to the war front along with their army, and they may need additional resources. So especially during wars, Al-Mashrut Jagirs were given to Mansabdars serving on the war front to raise additional resources. Is this clear? Okay. Then there was another type of Jagir. This was known as the तमगा जागीर. तमगा और अल तमगा जागीर. तमगा मतलब medal, so it is a sort of reward for loyal service, right? So if the empire was especially pleased with some Mansabdar, he would assign them a तमगा जागीर. अब इसकी क्वालिटीज डिफर कर सकते हैं. इट मे बी टेम्पररी इन नेचर, इट मे बी परमानेंट एंड हेरिडिटरी इन नेचर. दैट वुड डिपेंड प्योरली ऑन द एम्परर्स विशेस, ठीक है. बट जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट वाली जागीर्स हैं वो कौन सी हैं? तनखा जागीर्स, राइट. नाउ जागीरदारी क्राइसिस किस फिनोमिनन को बोलते हैं? व्हाट इज द जागीरदारी क्राइसिस? सी, Jagirs are the way in which the emperor is maintaining not only the loyalty of his Jagirdars, his Mansabdars, but also control over them, right? Because if the emperor wants, he can stop assigning them the Jagir. He can take the Jagir that is assigned to someone and give it to somebody else, right? So this is how to maintain loyalty and control. However, a mismatch started to occur. During Akbar's tenure, the number of Jagirdars was somewhere around 5,000. But by Shah Jahan's reign, this number had expanded to over 14,000. शाहजहां के दौर तक आ गया था, औरंगजेब में भी सिमिलर नंबर पे ही मेंटेन था. ठीक है. नाउ what explains this explosion in the number of mansabdars? More territorial control is necessary, administrative control is necessary. So horizontally as well as vertically, if the empire wants to expand, if it wants to control the lives of the people living within it more closely, so it would need a larger bureaucracy. Okay? So the size of the Mughal official class, its nobility, had expanded considerably, right? What would this mean with regards to the availability of Jagirs? क्या जब 5,000 मनसबदार हैं तो जितनी अवेलेबिलिटी थी जागीर्स की, क्या उतनी ही रहेगी जब 14,000 मनसबदार होंगे? No. तो availability of Jagirs is going to reduce. One way in which this can be managed is increase the availability of Jagirs, expand the size of the empire, conquer more territory so that it could be distributed among the larger number of Jagirdars. However, the rate at which the Mughal Empire was growing in terms of its territory, was it the same as the rate at which the size of the Mansabdari was growing? No. So territorially it was growing much smaller, and therefore the problem of shortage of Jagirs kept on intensifying. Okay? So this created an acute shortage of Jagirs. Now, the last major expansion of Mughal territory happened during the reign of Aurangzeb, when he conquered Bijapur and Golconda. Bijapur and Golconda were annexed. Now, why were Bijapur and Golconda so desirable? Was it because they possessed large tracts of extremely fertile land? Or was it primarily because of their commercial importance? Primarily because of their commercial importance. Their coasts were dotted with a series of important ports, extremely useful for both coastal trade as well as foreign trade. The Mughals wanted to establish their control over this trade. The revenues generated from this trade, they wanted to flow towards Delhi and Agra instead of towards Bijapur and Golconda. On the other hand, agriculturally, was this region very well developed? No, subsistence level पे farming होता था. Yes, there were a few fertile tracts such as the Krishna Godavari Delta, Raichur, Doab, etc. But rest of this region was not as fertile. It was not very verdant. The agricultural productivity of this region was rather low, rather suppressed. Okay? So even if Aurangzeb was to assign large Jagirs to the Jagirdars, would they be very happy? No. And secondly, Aurangzeb, was his fight over in the Deccan, or was it just beginning after this? It was just beginning after this. Marathas के साथ अगले 20 साल तक वो लड़ता रहेगा till he died, right? And therefore, instead of distributing whatever meager Jagirs there were available, what did he do? he assimilated the entire territory of Bijapur and Golconda into the category of crown lands, that all the revenues being generated from here are going to flow directly into the royal treasury. It is not going to be assigned to the Mughal Mansabdars. ठीक है, तो दो तरह का लैंड होता था. One was known as Paibaki land, the other was known as Khalisa land. Right? Paibaki land was the land that was set aside by the emperor to be distributed among the Mansabdars as Jagirs. And Khalisa land कौन सा land होता था? Royal lands, crown lands. तो आफ्टर अनेक्सिंग बीजापुर एंड गोलकोंडा, इसने पूरी टेरिटरी को क्या क्लासिफाई कर दिया? एज पैबाकी और एज खालिसा? एज खालिसा लैंड. राइट? एंड फर्दर ये जो नंबर है 14,000, is it going to remain the same or is it also going to grow? It is going to grow. Why? Because local nobility of Bijapur and Golconda, they also need to be assimilated into this system, right? Because if they are excluded, then they are more likely to rebel, right? So they were also inducted into the Mansabdari. तो एक डेक्कनी नोबिलिटी का फैक्शन भी इमर्ज हो जाता है. And the competition for Jagirs is going to further intensify. What is going to happen after Aurangzeb's death? A breakdown of the Mansabdari system. All these groups are going to start fighting against each other. What are they all essentially competing for? Jagirs, right? So each of these parties is interested in getting more and more Jagirs, right? However, political scenario kaisa hai? Is it a very stable one or is it characterized by instability? Instability. So whichever party succeeds, they are going to get an emperor who is going to be ready to sign on any piece of paper in front of him, right? So they may be assigned the Jagir of their choice, but are they assured that they'll be able to hold this Jagir for a considerable length of time? There is no surety about that. Why? Because emperor की जान की ही कोई सलामती नहीं है, right? So he may be replaced by somebody else. So what is going to be the outlook of these Jagirdars towards the Jagirs? Will they have a developmental outlook or will they have more of an extractive outlook? They'll have an extractive outlook. One thing could be that they invest money and time into farming, they expand agriculture, they introduce technological improvements, they expand the irrigation network. But all of that is going to take, first of all, a lot of money and secondly, a lot of time. Neither of which the Jagirdars have. They are not certain whether tomorrow they'll be able to retain their Jagirs or not. So their attitude is going to be very short term, myopic in nature. They will look at the Jagir as a cash cow कि इसको जितना जोर से और जितना जल्दी squeeze कर सकते हैं, that is what they are going to try and do, to squeeze as much out of it as quickly as possible. ठीक है? तो because of this, Jagirdars looked at Jagirs like cash cows. So instead of investing and developing the land, they try to extract from the land. Okay? Now, in this scenario, are the Mughal Jagirdars, are the Mughal Mansabdars going to be able to fulfill their commitments when it comes to administration or military responsibilities? Why? Because they don't have the necessary Jagirs. Even if they are being assigned Jagirs, it does not match their duties, their responsibilities. तो एक military breakdown, administrative breakdown होने लग जाएगा because of the shortage of Jagirs. So military and administrative attrition, that is going to result. क्लियर, समझ आया है? ठीक है, तो दिस वाज द जागीरदारी क्राइसिस. Associated with the जागीरदारी crisis, the agrarian crisis. Now, how are the Mughal Jagirdars looking at the Jagirs? Like cash cows, right? They are seeking to extract as much from it as possible in as short a time as possible. So, who are they shifting the burden towards? The actual producers, the agriculturalists, peasants, right? So, the agrarian crisis refers to the rising agrarian distress in the Mughal Empire. Agrarian distress due to a rising revenue demand and illegal extortion. So apart from the genuine revenue demand, which was also rising because of the rising military expenditure, जो local mansabdar हैं, local officials हैं, उनके ऊपर कोई चेक तो है नहीं, because Mughal central authority is now receding, it is weakening, and therefore they are going to start levying additional taxes जिनका कोई law books पे they have no presence. ठीक है, and illegal cesses. So these illegal cesses which did not have any legal backing, उनको फारसी में उस जमाने में बोलते थे अबवाब्स. So the Mughal Jagirdars, Mughal officials, they began collecting excessive sums of money. Are the peasants going to sit and take all this silently, or are they going to act? कैसे act करेंगे? Revolt तो एकदम end में आएगा when there is a complete sense of desperation. Before that, passive resistance करेंगे, right? Passive forms of resistance are going to be shown. For example, if the Jagirdar is saying that I need this labor for which I am not going to pay you, are they going to show up on time? No, they are not going to show up on time. बोलेंगे हुजूर सॉरी गलती हो गई, भैंस भाग गई थी, right? These kinds of excuses they are going to make. Then if they are forced to work, are they going to work very efficiently? नहीं, तो क्या करेंगे? बेगारी टालेंगे, काम चोरी करेंगे, राइट? बेगारी टालना मतलब पता है, ये टर्म सुना है? बेगार मतलब फ्री लेबर, वर्क विदाउट पे, और बेगारी टालने का मतलब तो काम करते हैं, ऐसा लगेगा कि आप काम कर रहे हो बट यू आर एक्चुअली नॉट वर्किंग. तो यू हैव बीन गिवन द टास्क ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्टिंग अ वॉल, तो आप क्या करोगे? उसका एक सेक्शन बनाओगे, फिर उसके बाद आप वही ईंटें उठा करके दूसरी जगह पे ले जाओगे, फिर दूसरा बनाओगे, तो डज द वॉल गेट फिनिश्ड? नो, इसको कहते हैं बेगारी टालना. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, you must also be sitting on your desk after going back home revise वगैरह करने के लिए, right? You spend 3 hours on your desk, लेकिन एक पेज से दूसरे पेज पे नहीं पहुंच पाते हो. Why? क्योंकि फोन में लगे हुए हो, किसी का कॉल आ गया उस पे लगे हुए हो, right? Or you're maybe daydreaming. So that is बेगारी टालना. So these are some passive forms of resistance, peasant resistance. But when the burden becomes critical, when the critical threshold is crossed and passive resistance does not seem to be working, तब क्या होगा? एक्टिव रेजिस्टेंस होगा, राइट? तो रिजल्ट क्या होगा? अग्रेरियन रिवोल्ट्स होंगे. एंड who is going to lead these agrarian revolts? Are ordinary peasants going to lead them, or are their natural leaders going to lead them? Natural leaders कौन है? पेजेंट्स के, जो हाँ लैंडलॉर्ड, जो लोकल लैंडेड एलिट्स हैं, the people who are actually having the responsibility of collecting revenue from the peasants and giving it to the Mughal officials. So these zamindars, these landlords, they'll actually be the ones. क्या हो गया? गार्डन में घूम रहे हो? so they'll be the ones who are actually going to lead this resistance. Now, agrarian revolts का एम्पायर की फाइनेंशियल हेल्थ पे इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा, मिलिट्री हेल्थ पे इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा? If these regions are up in revolt, will they continue paying revenue? No. So, loss of revenue. Further, in order to pacify these regions, they'll have to be invested militarily, right? So, military expenditure increases. If the empire is successful in militarily suppressing this revolt, does it actually win, or even now it loses? Even now it loses. Why? Because what is the expectation after pacifying this region? The empire is going to make recovery for the lost revenue and the military expenditure. So burden on the peasants is going to be further increased. And is this region going to remain peaceful? No, it is going to become permanently disturbed, right? Ultimately, the burden is going to be so much on the peasants that they'll find that there is no use working my field any longer. तो क्या करेंगे? अपने फील्ड्स को अबैंडन कर देंगे, अपने जानवरों को फ्री कर देंगे, एंड दे आर गोइंग टू गो इनटू द फॉरेस्ट्स, राइट? तो अबैंडनमेंट ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर. But if the empire is not able to militarily suppress the revolt, final outcome क्या होगा? These regions are going to break away, come out of the umbrella of imperial suzerainty, right? So political fragmentation. Clear है? The economic backbone of the empire is now starting to crumble. These were the Mansabdari, Jagirdari, and agrarian crises. The Mughal Empire also suffered from technological backwardness. What do we mean by technological backwardness? Scientific backwardness? Does this mean that no technological or scientific developments took place in the entire history of the Mughal Empire? No, some developments did take place. But ये जो developments हैं, इनके लिए impetus कहाँ से आ रहा था? Who was pushing this change? Was it the common people of India who were pushing this change, or was it the emperor or the royal court that was pushing this change? Royal court was pushing this change. Why? Because they wanted to gain a competitive advantage in terms of manufacturing against their local rivals, in terms of military against their local rivals. तो ये जो scientific research, development, technological improvement है, did it actually become a part of the lifestyle of India under the Mughal Empire, or was it some novelty that was reserved for the elites? It was a novelty that was reserved for the elites. And why did it not become part of the lifestyle of Indians? Because Indians were not psychologically and culturally prepared for it at that point of time. Had Indians also undergone developments such as the Renaissance and Reformation, इंडियन कॉन्शियसनेस पे उस तरह का इम्पैक्ट आया था? कोई साइंटिफिक रेवोल्यूशन हुआ? नहीं हुआ. तो because the Indian society was still medieval, therefore the Indian outlook towards science and technology also remained medieval. It remained completely functional. It did not become a moral pursuit. ठीक है? तो unlike the West, Indian society did not experience any renaissance. Thus, their outlook to life remained medieval. ठीक है? Some technological improvements and scientific advancements were witnessed. Full stop. However, this change was driven from the top for utilitarian purposes. ठीक है? And final result क्या हुआ? Even though India possessed great prosperity, it had extremely well developed artisanal production systems. It had a highly centralized putting out system. तो ददनी system इंडिया में already exist करता था. तो all the essential ingredients for industrialization, for the development of capitalism was there. But क्या नहीं था? That outlook that was needed to transform this potential into kinetic movement towards modern industry, towards modern capitalism. Okay? And ultimately, this translated into a major gap between India and the West in terms of military technology and capabilities. ठीक है? This was another factor for the decline of the Mughal Empire. समझ में आया है? And there are some other factors also, such as the foreign invasions, the rise of Indian rivals, and यूरोपियन विक्ट्रीज. तो इनको हम बोल सकते हैं एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स. Right? When we are saying foreign invasions, we are talking specifically about the invasions of Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali. Who was Nadir Shah? शाह ऑफ पर्शिया. ठीक है? तो ईरान का राजा था. एंड इन 1739 he invaded India and sacked Delhi. Right? Who was the Mughal emperor at this point of time? मोहम्मद शाह. उसको प्यार से उसके लोग क्या बोलते थे? संतरी मंत्री, रंगीला. राइट? तो अगर एम्परर का पर्सनालिटी ही रंगीन है, रंगीला आदमी है, तो व्हाट, हाउ इज ही गोइंग टू डिफेंड द एम्पायर? राइट? Similarly, Ahmad Shah Abdali, the ruler of Afghanistan. He was the founder of the Durrani Empire, right? Modern Afghanistan का founding father उसको माना जाता है. He invaded Mughal India how many times? 6 times, right? And his most devastating invasion came in 1761. Battle of Panipat was the decisive engagement. And on several of these occasions, ये कहाँ पहुंच जाता था सीधे? दिल्ली पहुंच जाता था, एम्परर को बोलता था जरा नीचे उतरिए और तख्त पे जाकर के खुद बैठ जाता था, राइट? तो दिस यूज्ड टू routinely happen. And what would these foreign invaders do after establishing control over Delhi? First, they are going to massacre the population, the section of the population, if there is even an iota of resistance. So Delhi was subjected to several sackings, several massacres. Then किस लिए आते थे इंडिया ये? लूटने के लिए, for plunder, right? So they used to plunder Delhi. They used to force the empress to pay heavy ransoms, utterly humiliate them, transfer all this burden to the common people, right? So what did this do to the emperor's prestige? Or would it remain intact or would it shatter? It would shatter. साथ में, who else was observing all of this? People in the rest of India, rulers in the rest of India, who were rivals of the Mughal Empire. So, because of these successive and rather easy capitulations, the myth of Mughal invincibility was further shattered. It also emboldened their local rivals. तो अब मुगल डिक्लाइन उतने ही पेस पे चलेगा और फर्दर एक्सेलरेट हो जाएगा, फर्दर एक्सेलरेट हो जाएगा. The local rivals are going to become more and more aggressive, and जो receding empire है that is going to be forced to recede even quicker. And कौन बैठा हुआ है opportunity को grab करने के लिए? European powers. By registering decisive victories against the Mughals, the European powers also threw their hat in the ring. ठीक है? So these were all the factors responsible for the downfall of the Mughal Empire. तो बताओ इसमें सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर कौन सा है? जितने भी 9 फैक्टर बताए हैं, कौन सा सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है? इज इट द पर्सनल फैक्टर्स, इंस्टीट्यूशनल फैक्टर्स और एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स? वीक किंग और इंस्टीट्यूशनल फैक्टर्स और अच्छा ये बताओ कि कौन सा ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर नहीं है? एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स, राइट? तो दिस external factor could have troubled only a weak empire, only a dying empire. Had the empire been strong enough, it could easily have withstood these challenges. Foreign invasions would have been repelled, local rivals would have been crushed, and the Europeans would never have been allowed to secure a victory, right? However, because the empire was internally weak, that is why ये जो बाहर का झटका है ये जोर से लगा, right? So this is the idea here. Now, as far as identifying that which single factor was the most important one, this is an exercise in futility, right? Trick question है. इसमें हमेशा जवाब क्या होना चाहिए? All factors were important, working in tandem to bring down the edifice of such a large and historical empire. Large empires neither rise due to singular factors, nor do they fall due to any single factor. A complex interplay between various types of factors is required in order to bring about this kind of massive change, right? So that should be the standard line always. Clear? Now, एक क्वेश्चन आप लोगों के लिए practice. Is it fair to say that Aurangzeb single-handedly precipitated the decline of the Mughal Empire? 15 marks, 200 words. What do we have to do here? क्या करना है? So we need to act as a judge over here. कटघरे में कौन खड़ा हुआ है? औरंगजेब. सवाल क्या पूछा जा रहा है कि तुमने मुगल एम्पायर को क्यों मारा? राइट. औरंगजेब बदले में क्या बोलेगा कि हुजूर मेरे से गलती हो गई, बट मैं पूरा कसूरवार नहीं हूं. There are other factors that are also responsible. So that is the kind of tone that you have to take. Now, obviously इस तरह से नहीं बोलोगे that he was standing in the witness box और जो भी कटघरे को बोलते हैं, but this is the imagery that you need to evoke. ठीक है, तो टोन इस तरह का लेना है. डिस्क्रिप्टिव टाइप आंसर और आर्गुमेंटेटिव टाइप आंसर. आर्गुमेंटेशन करना होगा यहाँ पर. एंड फाइनल वर्डिक्ट क्या होगा इसमें? Was Aurangzeb solely responsible? No. Aurangzeb did make certain critical mistakes, but his role was not as the progenitor of Mughal decline. He simply acted as the catalyst of Mughal decline. Institutional factors, other factors, crisis of personality, these were also important factors which allowed Aurangzeb's mistakes to have a drastic impact in precipitating the decline. तो इस तरह का आपको conclusion लिखना होगा. Clear है? तो बताओ, पहले are you going to talk about Aurangzeb's guilt or are you going to talk about other factors? Aurangzeb's mistakes, Aurangzeb का role, and then the other factors. ठीक है? Yes. अच्छा यही. ओके, चलो हो जाएगा ये. ऑलराइट. नेक्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट डेवलपमेंट क्या है 18th सेंचुरी में? द राइज ऑफ regional kingdoms. Now, we have seen that throughout the 18th century, the Mughal Empire was in a period, was in a downward spiral. It was in a phase of terminal decline. And as it disintegrated, जो उसकी constituent territories थी, they broke apart into independent regional kingdoms, right? Now, these regional kingdoms have been categorized by historians into 3 categories. The successor states, the rebel kingdoms, and independent polities. Now, what is the basis for this distinction? सक्सेसर कौन होता है? हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं उसको? उत्तराधिकारी. He inherits something from the predecessors, right? So the successor states were located in those areas which at one point of time used to be subas, used to be provinces in the Mughal Empire. And following the decline of Mughal central authority, they declared autonomy, right? They asserted their autonomy. So in name, they are going to remain part of the Mughal Empire, but in practice they are going to function as fully independent rulers. ठीक है? And because these states have inherited the traditions and the administrative culture of the Mughal Empire, Mughal administration और इनके बीच में are there going to be similarities or not? Yes, culture में भी similarities होंगे. तो culturally and administratively they had inherited the qualities and features of the Mughal Empire. ठीक है? That is why they are known as the successor states. Some examples: Bengal, Awadh, and Hyderabad. And in all 3 cases, the founders of these kingdoms adopted the same strategy. ठीक है? तो Mughal provinces, what were they called? Subas. Now, Akbar was the one who had introduced the system of subas, regular provinces, and in order to ensure that the subas don't break away from the Mughal Empire, so that the Mughal governors don't start acting independently, अकबर ने यहाँ पे क्या इंट्रोड्यूस किया? अ सिस्टम ऑफ चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस बेस्ड ऑन द सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स, राइट? तो सूबेदार में, सूबा में जो टॉप मोस्ट हाईएस्ट रैंकिंग ऑफिशियल होता था, हु वाज एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिवली रिस्पांसिबल फॉर द सूबा, दैट वाज नोन एज सूबेदार, राइट? नाउ इन ऑर्डर टू check his authority, Akbar also used to appoint a person who was responsible for finances of that suba, right? So revenue, income and expenditure both were in his hands, and here he acted independently of the सूबेदार. क्या बोलते थे इसको? दीवान. Further, while the Subedar was also responsible for the defense of his territory, and he was also responsible for undertaking war against their neighbors, against rivals, लेकिन एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिवली जो मिलिट्री एस्टैब्लिशमेंट है प्रोविंस में, उसका लीडर सूबेदार नहीं होता था. हु वाज ही? अनदर ऑफिशियल नोन एज बख्शी, राइट? And finally, judicial administration was overseen by yet another official known as Qazi. And among these four, what kind of a relationship would the center always encourage? Complete cooperation and coordination or healthy competition? Healthy competition, right? So they are going to be promised, if you give me some report of the wrongdoing of the other, I am going to give you his position, his land, right? तो इस तरह से तो everybody was trying to check each other's power. Ultimately फायदा किसको होगा? सेंटर को होगा, right? However, with the breakdown of royal authority, imperial power and Mughal military presence, this system also started to be undermined. And whether it is in Bengal, अवध और हैदराबाद, जो उनके फाउंडर्स हैं, उन सब ने एक चीज करी. क्या? दे वर ऑल सूबेदार्स ऑफ देयर रिस्पेक्टिव प्रोविंसेस. ठीक है? दे न्यू कि अगर हमें सूबा के अंदर अपना डोमिनेंस एस्टैब्लिश करना है, तो किसके फंक्शंस को हमें अब्सॉर्ब करना होगा? विच ऑफ दीज? दीवान. व्हाई? बिकॉज दीवान के पास ही एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की पूरी चाबी है. He controls the revenues of the province. If he controls the revenue, that means he can functionally control the Bakshi as well as Qazi. He is the one who has the administrative key in his hands as well. So, in case of all three examples, Bengal, Awadh and Hyderabad, जो इनके founders हैं, इन लोगों ने क्या किया? They combined the offices of सूबेदार and दीवान. ठीक है? और एक नया ऑफिस क्रिएट कर दिया. अपने आप को टाइटल दे दिया नवाब. नवाब बहादुर इमर्ज हो गया. ठीक है? इन केस ऑफ हैदराबाद, द फाउंडर अडॉप्टेड टाइटल निजाम. तो निजामत का मतलब भी होता है रूलर, राइट? नाजिम का मतलब रूलर, गवर्नर ही होता है. तो ही वाज गिविंग हिमसेल्फ इफेक्टिवली दिस टाइटल ऑफ नवाब, राइट? नाउ इनका लीगल अथॉरिटी कहां से डेराइव हो रहा है? एम्परर से. सो दे हैव बीन पोस्टेड ओवर हियर थ्रू अ रॉयल डिक्री, राइट? So they derive their legal sanction through a royal decree or farman, and thus in name they were supposed to be under the emperor, right? Serving the emperor. But in practice, were they actually inferior to the emperor? No, because they had complete control over the local revenues. They were the ones who were taking all important decisions. कि मेरे ऑफिशियल क्लास में who is going to be in what position, who can be there, who cannot be there. If there is any outsider, he will have to seek my permission to operate here. He cannot directly obtain a फरमान from the center, right? वो नहीं हो पाएगा. So this is what started to happen. The Nawab, although he was legally supposed to serve the emperor, in practice he operated almost independently of royal control. ठीक है? Now, when it comes to relations with Delhi, इनके इंटरेस्ट में क्या होगा? To strengthen the emperor, to eliminate him, or to weaken him? Why not eliminate him? कि फरमान तो खारिज हो जाएगा अगर उन्होंने एम्परर को मार दिया तो दे विल नॉट नो लॉन्गर बी एबल टू डिराइव एनी लीगल सैंक्शन फ्रॉम दिल्ली इफ दे वर टू एलिमिनेट द ऑफिस ऑफ द एम्परर. तो दे आर गोइंग टू कीप हिम अलाइव, बट आर दे गोइंग टू वर्क टू स्ट्रेंथन हिम और अंडरमाइन हिम? Undermine him, weaken him at every possible opportunity, make him economically and militarily dependent upon him as far as possible. Clear hai? This is what they are going to do. Now, दूसरे टाइप का किंगडम्स कौन से इमर्ज हुए? रेबेल किंगडम्स. तो ये कौन होंगे? These were those kingdoms which emerged after successful rebellion against the Mughal Empire. Right? Example, the Marathas, Sikhs, Afghan kingdoms of Rohilkhand and Farrukhabad, Jats, etc. Right? Jat kingdom of Bharatpur. So these were some of the rebel kingdoms. Now, remember that these regions were once part of the Mughal Empire. So, is there going to be any similarity between their administrative and cultural life and the Mughal Empire? Yes, some similarity is going to be there. Some things they will inherit. But is it going to be as high as the similarity between the successor states and the Mughal Empire? No. So they are going to have some cultural and administrative features of the Mughal Empire, but they are going to be more distinct in this regard as compared to the successor states. Clear hai? Sure. And finally we had the independent kingdoms. So these were regions which were either never directly controlled by the Mughal Empire or were never part of the Mughal Empire itself. Right? तो ये कौन से kingdoms होंगे? The Rajput kingdoms and Mysore. समझ में आया है? Now, this list gives you an overview of the emergence of regional kingdoms. So the earliest to break away was Bengal, established in 1713, founded by the first Nawab, Murshid Quli Khan. So Murshid Quli Khan had been posted as the सूबेदार of Bengal, and सबसे पहला काम क्या किया इसने? He you can say joined the powers of सूबेदार and Diwan and created the new office of Nawab. इसने अपना नया कैपिटल बनाया, named after himself, मुर्शिदाबाद. ठीक है? Then the Marathas emerged as an independent power under the Peshwas after the Maratha Civil War, जिसमें power का ट्रांसफर होता है from the hands of the Chhatrapati, the legal ruler, to the hands of the Peshwa, the prime minister. तो Peshwa or prime minister after this is going to become independent of the Chhatrapati's authority, and he is no longer going to be a royal appointee. He is going to become a hereditary official. ठीक है? And once again ये civil war 1713 में resolve होता है, तो it also emerges in 1713, and first Peshwa independent of the Chhatrapati's authority, Balaji Vishwanath. So Balaji Vishwanath had ensured that Shivaji's grandson Shahuji emerges victorious. But since he was the one who had placed Shahuji on the throne, he was kingmaker, and सत्ता इसके हाथ में ही रहेगी. ठीक है? इनका सीट ऑफ पावर क्या था? पूना. राइट. नेक्स्ट, अवध, which broke away as a semi-independent region of the Mughal Empire in 1722 under Saadat Hasan Khan. इनके टाइटल्स भी हैं कुछ, right? So he was known as Burhan ul Mulk. This was a title given to him by the Mughal emperors themselves, and the title Alija, which he adopted after declaring himself as Nawab, right? तो ये जो डायनेस्टी इस पे रूल करेगी अवध के ऊपर, that was known as the Alijahi dynasty. And early capital क्या था इनका? Faizabad. Later it was transferred to Lucknow. Then we have Hyderabad, which emerged as an autonomous region of the Mughal Empire in 1724. Founder Chin Kilich Khan. मुगल्स इनको किस नाम से जानते थे? Nizam ul Mulk, right? And after becoming Nizam of Hyderabad, he adopted the title Asaf Jah. इनकी डायनेस्टी का नाम भी क्या पड़ा? Asaf Jahi dynasty. And capital city Hyderabad, right? Then we have the regional kingdom of Mysore. Now Mysore was once part of the Vijayanagar Empire. So it was being ruled by a Nayaka of the Vijayanagar Empire. So that Nayaka belonged to which dynasty? The Wadiyar dynasty. Now, gradually, the Wadiyars lost their grip over power. They became puppet rulers under the influence of corrupt ministers. And in this background, one brilliant military commander rose to the ranks and became the de facto ruler of Mysore. Kaun? Hyder Ali in 1761. So he did not adopt the title of Sultan. That was done by his son Tipu, right? इसने अपने आप को केवल मिलिट्री कमांडर का एक खिताब दिया. तो the Wadiyar ruler remained on the throne at Mysore, and in order to further reduce his influence, further isolate him, हैदर अली ने अपना कैपिटल कहाँ पे एस्टैब्लिश किया? एट सेरिंगापट्टनम और श्रीरंगपट्टनम. ठीक है? तो कैपिटल ऑफ मैसूर अंडर हैदर अली, सेरिंगापट्टनम. एंड फाइनली we have the Sikh Empire, established in 1799, founded by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, with its capital at Lahore. Right? Now, Sikhs had been fighting against the Mughals for a very long period of time. जहांगीर के जमाने से लड़ाई चल रही थी इन लोगों की. Right? Now, Guru Gobind Singh reconstituted the Sikhs into the Khalsa, an elite band of warriors, right? तो वहां पे जो सिख कम्युनिटी है उसका मिलिटराइजेशन शुरू हो जाता है, and military is one of the important components of statehood, right? So the transformation of this social and cultural movement, this religious movement, into a political movement had started as a result of, firstly, the conflict against the Mughals, secondly, the feeling of oneness because of the religious influence of the Sikh religion, and lastly, because of a shared sense of being victimized by these oppressors, right? So because of this, उनको militarize करना पड़ा, and the aspirations for creating a separate state that also increased. Now, इसके लिए opportunity कब मिलेगी? Following the death of Aurangzeb and the rapid decline of Mughal authority, so Punjab started to slip out of the grip of the Mughals. But does this mean that the Sikhs would have a very easy time in cobbling out a new state? No. Why? Because after the death of the last Guru, क्या नाम था उनका? Guru Gobind Singh, there was a lot of internal division within the Khalsa army and among the Sikh Sardars, right? So these Sardars, the Sikhs, were divided into a number of clans or missiles. Total कितनी मिसलें थी? 12 मिसलें, right? So these 12 missiles, each had their own army, their own region that they controlled, and their own leader, right? So there was a lot of internal conflict. So there was division. And 18th century क्या पंजाब के लिए बहुत पीसफुल पीरियड था? नहीं. Why? The decline of Mughal authority had left the gateway open to outsiders. And किसने रेड करना शुरू किया यहाँ पर? Initially नादिर शाह. तो नादिर शाह blew the gates open. And किसका काम आसान कर दिया बाद में? अहमद शाह अब्दाली का. तो पंजाबी में there is a very famous saying, खाया पिया लायदा बाकी अहमद शाहिदा. तो that refers to the kind of outlook that the people of this region developed. तो क्या बोल रहे हैं? That whatever you eat, only that is yours. बाकी सब अहमद शाह का है. He can come and take it away whenever he wants. The idea is God has given you one life, enjoy yourself. तो वो जो ट्रैजिक हिस्ट्री ऑफ फॉरेन इन्वेजन्स एंड सब्जुगेशन था, उसको एक ह्यूमरस वे में क्या बोलते हैं, वोकलाइज करने की कोशिश करी गई है यहाँ. ठीक है. अच्छा, नाउ बिकॉज ऑफ द डिवाइडेड नेचर, द सिख्स वर अनएबल टू काउंटर द राइजिंग अफगान प्रेजेंस ओवर हियर. तो जरूरी क्या था कि कोई एक ऐसा इंसान इमर्ज होना चाहिए जो कि इन 12 मिसलों को यूनाइट कर सके. एंड कौन था वो? Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Through a combination of diplomacy and war, initially he unified the 12 missiles. He was also a member of a particular missile. वो किस मिसल को बिलोंग करते थे? The Sukarchakia missile. Maharaja Ranjit Singh belonged to the Sukarchakia missile. And through a combination of war and diplomacy, कभी matrimonial alliances, कभी martial and military alliances, कभी war, he was able to bring all the 12 missiles under his own flag. And अब किससे लड़ाई करेंगे? Against the Afghans. So piece by piece, battle after battle, he removed the Afghan presence from the entire region of Punjab. तो पेशावर तक उन्होंने अपना रूल एस्टैब्लिश कर दिया, एंड लाहौर ही मेड इट हिज कैपिटल सिटी. ठीक है. सो दिस इज हाउ द सिख एम्पायर केम इनटू बीइंग, राइट. एंड ये हो गए द रीजनल किंगडम्स. इज दैट थिंग रेडी? कैसे करना है उसको एक्टिवेट? कल करेंगे. तो टॉपिक तो आज खत्म हो गया. चलिए फिर. Right. Now, questions. With reference to the entry of European powers into India, which one of the following statements is not correct? A. The Portuguese captured Goa in 1499. Yes or no? Not correct. Correct answer is 1510. किसने कॉन्कर किया था इसे? Which governor? Albuquerque. From whom? Bijapur. Which dynasty? Adil Shahi dynasty of Bijapur. Hooghly was used as a base for piracy by the Portuguese. When were the Portuguese expelled from Hooghly? 1632. By whom? क्या नाम था उसका? कासिम खान. Who was the Mughal emperor? शाहजहां. ठीक है. तो पढ़ा है ना. Next question. In the year 1613, where was the English East India Company given permission to set up a factory? At Surat. By whom? The Mughal Emperor Jahangir. After which battle? Battle of Suwali. Okay. Which one of the following was the first fort constructed by the British in India? पहला fort. Fort William, Fort St. George, Fort St. David or Fort St. Angelo? Fort St. George. कहां पर? Madras. Next. With reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. First, the Dutch established their factories and warehouses on the east coast on lands granted to them by the Gajpati rulers. Yes or no? No. Why is it incorrect? Gajpati rulers had disappeared by this point of time, right? So Gajpati rulers किस region को rule करते थे? Odisha and certain parts of northern Andhra Pradesh, right? Control है change होता रहता था, and they had disappeared by the mid 15th century. So after the Gajpatis, this region had come under the control initially of the Vijayanagar Empire, then the Bahmani Kingdom, and then Golconda, right? So at the time that the Dutch got to this place, ये कौन कंट्रोल कर रहा था? Golconda Sultanate, the Qutub Shahi Sultanate of Golconda. This is incorrect. Number 2, Alfonso de Albuquerque captured Goa from the Bijapur Sultanate. Yes. The English East India Company established a factory at Madras on a plot of land leased from a representative of the Vijayanagar Empire. Also correct. तो local नायका जो था. So which of these is correct? B. 2 and 3 only. Next question. In the first quarter of the 17th century, in which of the following was or were the factory or factories of the English East India Company located? Broch. Broch was the old name for Bharuch. कहाँ पे located है ये? गुजरात में. तो गुजरात में अंग्रेजों की फैक्ट्रीज बननी शुरू हो गई थी. by 1625 यहाँ पे फैक्ट्री बना होगा. Yes, सूरत में बनाया तो बारूच में बनाया था. बारूच was also an important port city. This is correct. Chikakol. Where is it? It is known presently as Shikakulam. Andhra Pradesh में. So, had the British obtained permission to set up factories at Andhra in the Andhra region? Yes, मसूलीपट्टनम में already established कर चुके थे and 1632 में golden फरमान भी मिल गया था, right? तो will this be correct or incorrect? First quarter of 17th century. First quarter of 17th century मतलब 1600 to 1625. तो बताओ गोल्डन फरमान कब इशू हुआ है? 32. तो श्रीकाकुलम पॉसिबल होगा? नहीं. एंड ट्रिनिचपोली? ट्रिनिचपोली कहाँ है? अरे तिरुचिरापल्ली, right? Where? Tamil Nadu. So will they have a presence over here? Also no. So correct answer A. Next question, number 7. With reference to the history of India, consider the following pairs. Aurang, in charge of the treasury of the state, Baniyan, an Indian agent of the East India Company, Mirasidar, designated revenue payer to the state. So which of these are correctly matched? So औरंग आपने सुना नहीं है तो आई विल नॉट होल्ड यू रिस्पॉन्सिबल. बनियन, इज दिस करेक्ट? इंडियन एजेंट ऑफ द ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी. यस, तो लोकल ट्रेडर होता था, was acting as an agent and advisor. Mirasidar, designated revenue payer to the state. This is also correct. So this was a term that was quite popular in South India, right? तो विजयनगर एम्पायर में जो लैंड होल्डर होता था, who was responsible for paying revenue to the empire, that was known as Mirasidar, right? So the British inherited this term from there, and they introduced the Rayatwari settlement over here, है ना? तो रैयतवारी में who was supposed to be the taxpayer? The peasant, the rayat. However, what happened was that because of excessive taxation, the peasants were routinely forced to borrow money in order to pay the government. So gradually, as a result of this, they lost control over their land, and ownership was transferred to richer local peasants or some outsiders. क्या बोलते थे उस ग्रुप को collectively? मिरासीदार बोलते थे. तो he became the designated revenue payer to the state. Orang, this is a Persian word which means warehouse. ठीक है. तो इंग्लिश में जिस चीज को फैक्ट्री बोलते हैं ना, उसको फारसी में क्या बोलते थे? औरंग बोलते थे. तो इज दिस करेक्टली मैच्ड? दिस इज इनकरेक्ट. Which of the pairs given above is or are correctly matched? B, 2 and 3. तो औरंगजेब का मतलब क्या हुआ फिर? हाँ, जेब का मतलब क्या होता है? जेवर, जैसे जेब पाँव में पहनते हैं ना, तो जेवर. औरंगजेब क्या हुआ फिर? फैक्ट्री का जूल. डजंट मेक सेंस, राइट? तो औरंग का एक और मतलब होता है इन फारसी, इट मींस द तख्त, रॉयल थ्रोन. तो थ्रोन के ऊपर जड़ा हुआ जो सबसे बेशकीमती जेवर है, उसका मतलब औरंगजेब. औरंगजेब वाज नॉट हिज बर्थ नेम. इट वाज, बर्थ नेम क्या था औरंगजेब का? आलमगीर का मतलब क्या हुआ? जो आलम को, पूरी दुनिया को अपनी गिरफ्त में रखे, राइट? तो दैट वाज आल्सो अ टाइटल, वो उसने खुद अडॉप्ट किया था आफ्टर बिकमिंग रूलर. हिज बर्थ नेम वाज मुइजुद्दीन मोहम्मद, राइट? तो औरंगजेब वाज अ टाइटल गिवन टू हिम बाय हिज रॉयल फादर व्हेन ही वाज ओनली 15 इयर्स ऑफ एज. तो मुगलों को हाथी घोड़ों का बड़ा शौक था, तो दो हाथियों की कुश्ती लड़ा रहे थे लोग, ठीक है? और द शाहजहां वाज सिटिंग इन द प्लेस ऑफ प्रोमिनेंस, वहां से बैठ करके प्रोसीडिंग्स को देख रहा था. एक हाथी पागल हो गया. ही वेंट ऑन अ रैम्पेज एंड शामियाने को गिराने लग गया, चार्ज करने लग गया यहां से वहां तक. तो ऑल ऑफ शाहजहां सन्स वर सिटिंग. कौन कौन? दारा शिको, औरंगजेब, शाह शुजा, एंड चौथे वाले का नाम मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा है, राइट? आई डोंट रिमेंबर हिज नेम. तो चारों लोग बैठे हुए थे. और शाहजहां वाज वेटिंग टू सी दैट व्हिच वन इज गोइंग टू स्प्रिंग टू एक्शन. तो सबसे बड़ा कौन था? दारा शिको. सबसे फेवरेट कौन था? दारा शिको, राइट? तो शाहजहां ने क्या बोला? बेटा जा हाथी को काबू में कर. तो दारा शिको क्या करने लगा? आयतें पढ़ने लगा, हाथ जोड़ने लगा, राइट? दैट इज व्हाट हिज इंटरेस्ट वाज इन. हु एक्टेड? औरंगजेब एक्टेड. तो ओनली एट द एज ऑफ 15 ही स्प्रैंग ऑन टू हिज हॉर्स एंड किसी तरह जाकर के हाथी के ऊपर चढ़ के बैठ गया. ही ब्रॉट हिम अंडर कंट्रोल. तो ऑन दैट ओकेजन ही वाज गिवन द टाइटल औरंगजेब. ठीक है. Next question. Which of the following groups of plants was domesticated in the New World and introduced into the Old World? Tobacco, cocoa and rubber, tobacco, cotton and rubber, cotton, coffee and sugar cane, rubber, coffee and wheat. थर्ड वाला करेक्ट और इनकरेक्ट? सॉरी, फोर्थ वाला करेक्ट और इनकरेक्ट? इनकरेक्ट. क्यों? वीट तो भाई हड़प्पा मोहनजोदारो के पहले से उगा रहे हैं, राइट? कॉटन, कॉफी एंड शुगर केन, कॉटन भी उसी जमाने से कल्टीवेट कर रहे हैं. टोबैको, कॉटन एंड रबर, ऑल्सो इनकरेक्ट. तो बचा क्या? टोबैको, कोको एंड रबर. ठीक है. कहां से आया था ये सब? साउथ अमेरिका से आया था. कंसिडर द फॉलोइंग. First, assessment of land revenue on the basis of nature and soil on quality of crops, use of mobile cannons in warfare, cultivation of tobacco and red chilies. Which of the above was or were introduced into India by the English? Were they the ones who introduced the practice of survey and measurement of land? या फिर पहले से एग्जिस्ट करता था इंडिया? पहले से था. तो वी नो दैट इवन ड्यूरिंग अलाउद्दीन खिलजी's reign this was done. उसके पहले the अर्थशास्त्र reveals that certain lands were measured and surveyed routinely, right? So this is incorrect. Use of mobile cannons in warfare, did the British introduce this? बाबर ने इंट्रोड्यूस किया. कल्टिवेशन ऑफ टोबैको एंड रेड चिलीज, पोर्चुगीज ने इंट्रोड्यूस किया, नॉट द इंग्लिश. विच इज करेक्ट? डी, नन. With reference to Pondicherry, now Puducherry, consider the following statements. The first European power to occupy Pondicherry were the Portuguese. Yes. French तो बहुत बाद में है ना, they were the last entrants. So Portuguese were actually the first power to come and occupy it. The second European power to occupy Pondicherry were the French. No, it was the Dutch. ठीक है. The English never occupied Pondicherry. Also incorrect. Third Anglo-French War में after they defeated the French, they occupied Pondicherry. Yes, they restored it to the French, but it came under English occupation. So correct answer A, one only. Which one of the following is the correct statement? Modern Kochi was a Dutch colony till India's independence. No. Dutch defeated the Portuguese and built Fort William in the modern Kochi. Yes. Modern Kochi was first a Dutch colony before the Portuguese took it over. No, it belonged first to the Portuguese, and modern Kochi never became part of British colony. Also incorrect. ठीक है. अगला सवाल number 12. In India, among the following locations, the Dutch established their earliest factory at Masulipatam. Some more questions. Arrange the following European powers in chronological sequence of arrival. सबसे पहले Portuguese, then Dutch, then English, and finally the Danes. Correct answer 3214. कौन सा है? C. Number 2. Towards the end of the 15th century, which of the following factors contributed to the discovery of new trade routes to India and the East Indies by European powers? 1. The rise of nation states under strong monarchs. Was this a contributing factor? Yes. Second, capture of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks. Push factor था. ठीक है. Third, zeal to spread Christianity. Yes. Pull factor. Renaissance in Europe. Yes. And finally, internal feuds of succession in Indian princely states. So yes, by this point of time, some internal feuds had started to happen. But did the Europeans knew about it when they thought of coming to India? No, so this could not have been a factor. So correct answer 1, 2, 3, and 4 only. In the context of advent of European powers in India, the term Estado de India is described as factories established by the Portuguese, factories established by Dutch, administrative system of Portuguese, or administrative system of French. Estado de India, the state of India. So state of India, commercial system होगा, administrative system? Administrative system of the Portuguese. Arrange the following Portuguese governor in the correct chronological order. पहला Almeida, second Albuquerque, and last Nuno da Cunha. Right? The correct answer is 213. B. Which of the following developments in India can be associated with Portuguese presence in India? Propagation of Christianity. Yes. Introduction of printing press. Yes. Introduction of paper. No, paper तो यहाँ से लेने के लिए आए थे वो. ठीक है. Correct answer is 1 and 2 only. In the context of advent of European powers in India, consider the following statements in the context of the Battle of Bedara. Battle of Bedara is something we'll be covering in our next section. First, it was a battle fought between the Dutch and British in the Andhra region. Incorrect. It was a battle fought between the British and the Dutch, but in the Bengal region. Okay? So this is incorrect. Second, the Dutch were defeated in this battle. Correct. So the battle was fought in 1759. Shortly after which major battle? प्लासी. 1757 में प्लासी हुआ था और बंगाल रीजन में ही फिर डच के साथ ही लड़ेंगे, राइट। आफ्टर प्लासी नया नवाब कौन बना? अरे हिस्ट्री के सबसे बड़े मक्कारों में से नाम किसका किसका आता है? मीर जाफर, राइट। उसका एक्सपेक्टेशन क्या था? नवाब तो वो बन गया, वो एक्सपेक्टेशन तो फुलफिल हो गया। ही फेल्ट दैट ही इज गोइंग टू wield रियल पावर, बट रियलिटी क्या हुआ? He only had nominal authority. He was a puppet in the hands of the company. So he felt that if I want to assert real power, I'll have to dislodge the company. So he said, I am not strong enough to do this alone. There may be somebody else who can. तो इसने किसको इनवाइट किया? डच को इनवाइट किया. Come and dislodge the British from my territory. I'm going to reward you richly. This was the occasion for the Battle of Bedara in 1759. This battle is also known by another name, Battle of Chinsura. The Dutch were defeated and they were forced to sell all their remaining factories in India to the English East India Company after this. So Dutch presence completely ended from India after this. ठीक है, तो मीर जाफर का क्या करेगा क्लाइव? छोड़ेगा या नहीं? नहीं, तो क्लाइव के पास सिंपल था, मारने वारने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. Simply replace him with somebody else who wants to become Nawab. So he was replaced by his own son-in-law, Mir Qasim. ठीक है. First English factory in India was set up in Masulipatam, 1611. Number 9. In the context of 17th century India, consider the following statements in the context of Battle of Swali. It was fought between the English and French, English and Portuguese. It played an important role for the English to set up a factory at Surat. Yes. And the Danes were decisively defeated in this battle. Portuguese were defeated. The correct answer, C. Who among the following was successful in obtaining rights to trade and establish factories in all parts of the Mughal Empire? James I, Thomas Roe, William Hawkins, or Job Charnock? Thomas Roe. He was the ambassador of King James I of England to the court of Jahangir. ठीक है, तो these were, हाँ क्या कह रहे हो? Question number 3. Last to leave, Portuguese. चलो, तो ये हो गया the early episode of modern Indian history. Now we come to the next part. That is early British conquests. So the rise of British ascendancy. When does this episode unfold? In the middle of the 18th century, right? So मतलब बोल सकते हैं आप कि 1740s, let us say 1760s or 1770s, right? Which phase of British capitalism does this fall in? Mercantile, industrial या financial? Mercantile capitalism का दौर चल रहा था. What were the economic priorities of the British? ठीक है, to create a trade monopoly or maximize profits or arrest the drain of wealth that was taking place from Britain to India. What was the condition of the Mughal Empire at this time? It had started to fragment. So the political scenario was one of political fragmentation, instability, and war. ठीक है? So it was because of this political scenario that the company, for the first time in its history, got the opportunity to pursue all these objectives through non-commercial, political or military means. Is this clear? So this provided the opportunity for fulfilling these objectives. ठीक है? Now, is it in the company's interests to engage in wars at this point of time? नो, क्योंकि वो उसके प्रॉफिट मार्जिन को रिड्यूस करेगा. बट इज प्रॉफिट द ओनली थिंग दैट दे आर ड्रिवन बाय एट दिस टाइम? नो. प्रॉफिट के लिए दे फेल्ट दैट मोनोपोली वाज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड रास्ते में इनके कौन खड़ा हुआ था? The French were there, and they also wanted to arrest the drain of wealth. तो इनके जो ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं इनमें थोड़ा सा कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन है, एंड देयरफॉर the desire for maximizing profits was superseded by other objectives such as establishing and maintaining a monopoly and arresting the drain of wealth. And outcome क्या होगा इसका? Wars are going to take place, namely the Carnatic Wars and the Anglo-Bengal War. So first, we'll talk about the Carnatic Wars. These are also known as the Anglo-French Wars. देखना क्या क्या है यहाँ पर? The factors responsible for these wars, the important developments, and finally the significance. Or importance. And last of all, कौन जीता है इस वॉर में? This is the episode of the rise of English ascendancy. So why did the British win? Why did the French lose? So reasons for British success or French failure. These are the important questions that we need to address. Now, first of all, the factors for the Anglo-French rivalry. क्या factors हैं? First of all, Economic rivalry. That is the root cause of the competition, of the conflict. At this stage, what were both companies trying to do? The English and French East India Company. They were trying to create an exclusive monopoly on India's external trade. And thus, they are going to look at each other as what? As rivals. So, their idea would be that in order to succeed, what do we need to do? Eliminate the other entirely. So, either that can be done through better commercial networking, striking better deals, right? Getting more access. या फिर जंग लड़के, right? Now, why was the first thing not possible in both cases? Only through commercial enterprise, why could they not have ended the monopoly of the other? Because for that to happen, one of these companies would have to function with extraordinary efficiency. Was that the way in which either of these companies actually operated? किस तरह का ऑपरेशन था इनका? करप्ट था, लीकी था, इनएफिशिएंट था, राइट? तो कंपनी की मोनोपोली को खुद कंपनी के ऑफिशियल्स अंडरमाइन कर रहे थे. बट कुड दे एडमिट दिस टू देयर शेयर होल्डर्स, टू पार्लियामेंट? क्या बोलेंगे? वी आर नॉट बीइंग एबल टू मेक अ प्रॉफिट because of the French, not because of our own corruption. ठीक है? So they are going to push their respective nations, their governments and their shareholders towards decisive and direct military engagement against the enemy. This is going to be one factor. And why are the governments of either side even going to consider this? कि किसी एक कमर्शियल वेंचर के लिए आप जंग के लिए चले जाओ, that's quite a big decision. So why would they be willing to take this decision? Because of the rising importance of Indian trade in the national economies of both Britain and France. So by 1740, India's trade alone accounted for roughly 10% of Britain's national GDP. France बाद में आया था, तो its trade was a little smaller in volume, but in terms of value, it was almost 5% of the French national product. तो कोई भी मेजर इकोनॉमी अपनी इकोनॉमिक हेल्थ में 10 या 5% का ब्लो सस्टेन कर सकता है? अब्सॉर्ब कर पाएगा? नहीं कर पाएगा. So it had become an almost existential issue for both sides. So they were willing to go to war in order to settle these scores. Is this clear? Secondly, one contributing factor was political instability in the region. Right? So this region had recently been set up as an independent kingdom. So it came under the territory of which independent kingdom? Hyderabad, right? And after the death of the founder Asaf Jah the first in 1748, क्या होगा हैदराबाद में? Succession dispute emerge हो जाएगा. People are going to say, I am going to be king. No, I am going to be king, right? और इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? The clouds of war are going to gather, and this is going to be an opportunity for whom? For both these companies. If we are able to place our person on the throne, he is going to give us a more favorable deal. He is going to push the other one out. He is not going to allow them to trade in his territory. So both the companies jumped into these succession disputes. Okay. Thirdly, the role of Dupleix. Dupleix was the name of the French Governor General at the start of this episode. ठीक है? तो उसने एक नया स्ट्रैटेजी इंट्रोड्यूस किया. क्या? He was among the first to realize that the European troops, European soldiers with modern technology, with modern weapons, are far more superior to the traditional Indian armies. So he was the one who used the policy of offering up military help to his Indian collaborators. अब दो इंडियन प्रिंसेस के बीच में लड़ाई हो रही है, both of them are wanting the throne. He is going to approach one of them and say that I am ready to offer you my army which will help you easily defeat your rival. बदले में मुझे क्या चाहिए होगा? That you expel the British and establish a trade monopoly, right? So obviously it is an existential matter. Any prince is going to agree. Are the English going to sit silently, or are they also going to adopt the same policy? They'll also adopt the same policy. So they'll approach the other rival, right? But Dupleix was the one who initiated this process. And lastly, European conflicts also had an important role to play. So see, these companies had their own economic scores to settle in India, है ना? But they would need some justification for going to war. So one very convenient justification for them during this period was that because our nations are at war in Europe, therefore it is also legitimate for us to go to war. वो एक्चुअली एक नेशनल ऑनर के लिए या फिर नेशनल इंटरेस्ट के लिए लड़ाई कर रहे हैं या फिर खुद के कमर्शियल इंटरेस्ट के लिए? कमर्शियल इंटरेस्ट के लिए कर रहे हैं, बट दे आर गोइंग टू प्रेजेंट इट एज एन एक्सटेंशन ऑफ द यूरोपियन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. क्लियर? So these are the important factors, right? Next, what do we have to cover? The important developments. Total, how many wars were fought? 3 wars. The first, second and third Carnatic War. First Carnatic War time period 1746 to 1748. Second Carnatic War 1749 to 1754. And third Carnatic War 1757 to 63. Right? 1757 to 1763. Now, why was the war initiated? Right? तो ट्रिगर क्या था? या कैटलिस्ट क्या था? देखो, the first war was fought in the backdrop of a European conflict. Britain and France were at war, and the English used this as an opportunity to declare war, to initiate conflict against the French East India Company. क्या नाम था इस यूरोपियन वॉर का? वॉर ऑफ ऑस्ट्रियन सक्सेशन. So, using this as an excuse, the British destroyed some French ships in the Bay of Bengal. अब French retaliated. उन्होंने क्या किया? They marched from Pondicherry to an unprepared Madras and Madras के ऊपर कब्जा कर लिया. They laid siege to Madras, right? English were in an alliance with a local ruler, so they were patronized by a local ruler. He was the Nawab of Carnatic, right? That is why these wars are known as the Carnatic Wars. क्या नाम था बंदे का? नवाब अनवरुद्दीन, right? Now, नवाब अनवरुद्दीन से उन्होंने अपील करी कि हुजूर बचा लीजिए किसी तरह से, माए बाप फ्रेंच बहुत मार रहे हैं, राइट? मैं आपकी सेवा करता रहूंगा. तो नवाब को भी मतलब एकदम जोश आ गया. इसने एक बड़ी सी आर्मी गैदर करी फ्रॉम आर्कट, हिज कैपिटल, एंड बिगैन मार्चिंग नॉर्थवर्ड्स टुवर्ड्स मद्रास. रास्ते में एक छोटा सा फोर्ट पड़ता था. दिस वाज नोन एज फोर्ट सेंथॉम. It was located on the banks of the river Adyar, which is presently flowing within the city of Chennai, right? लेकिन उस समय मद्रास के outskirts पे होता था. And the French knew that the Nawab's army is coming, so they had garrisoned this small fort with only 500 soldiers. नवाब कितने सोल्जर्स लेके आया था? 10,000, राइट? तो एक्सपेक्टेशन क्या था सबका? Nawab is going to easily overpower the small French garrison and march on to take Madras. लेकिन रिजल्ट क्या हुआ in the Battle of Adyar? The small, well-equipped and well-trained French garrison was not only to hold off the invading Indian army, but it was able to rout it completely. More than 3,000 Indian soldiers are believed to have died in this brief engagement. ठीक है, तो कौन सा decisive battle है? Battle of Senthom, also known as the Battle of Adyar. This resulted in a French victory over the Carnatic army. Clear? What was the significance of this development? जिस चीज का सबको शक था अब उसका भरोसा हो जाएगा. क्या? कि इंडियन फोर्सेस आर पेपर टाइगर्स. वो पेपर पे हो सकता है कि लाखों की सेना लेकर के आए, बट आर दे एक्चुअली एबल टू विन वॉर्स? No, no longer. They have lost the edge. Superior technology, better training, and better equipment have given a major edge to European powers. So it exposed, or it revealed, European military superiority. तो अब बताओ, द सर्विसेज ऑफ यूरोपियन आर्मीज, इसकी डिमांड इंडिया में घटेगी या बढ़ेगी? बढ़ेगी. एंड हु कैपिटलाइज्ड? सबसे पहले डुप्ले, राइट? तो जंग शुरू कहां हुई थी? यूरोप में, वॉर ऑफ ऑस्ट्रियन सक्सेशन. तो खत्म भी यूरोप से ही होगी. The French had gained an upper hand in India, but France had lost the war against the British in Europe. तो एक ट्रीटी साइन होगा. This was known as the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. And as part of the terms of this treaty, will the French be allowed to retain Madras or will they be forced to return it? They'll be forced to return it. Britain यूरोप में जीत चुका था, तो मद्रास was restored to the British, and वही promises हुए कि अब peace का time आ चुका है, we are no longer going to contest against each other. But were these promises substantial या खोखले थे? hollow थे, खोखले थे. तो next war was triggered the very next year, 1749, following the death of 1748 में कौन मर गया था? नवाब उद्दीन निजाम ऑफ हैदराबाद, आसफजादी फर्स्ट, राइट? एंड हुआ क्या? अ सक्सेशन डिस्प्यूट emerged, not only in Hyderabad but in Carnatic as well. तो देखो, इस रीजन का मैप समझ लो. तो this was the state of Hyderabad, है ना? एंड इसका एक इंटरनल एनक्लेव था, दैट वाज नोन एज द कर्नाटिक. अब वो समझ में आया था ना, द न्यू काइंड ऑफ रिलेशनशिप दैट हैदराबाद हैड विद द मुगल एम्परर. कैसा था? सुपरफिशियल या सब्सटेंशियल? सुपरफिशियल था. तो सुपरफिशियली द मुगल एम्परर वाज स्टिल इन चार्ज, बट एक्चुअली Nizam of Hyderabad acted almost as an independent ruler. तो while the Nawab of Carnatic was supposed to be inferior to the Nizam of Hyderabad, in reality he was also ruling like an autonomous ruler. So the kind of relationship that Hyderabad shared with Delhi is the same kind of relationship that Arcot had with Hyderabad. समझ में आया? अच्छा, तो यहाँ पे दो इंपॉर्टेंट किंगडम्स थे, हैदराबाद और कर्नाटक. दोनों जगह पे साइमल्टेनियसली सक्सेशन डिस्प्यूट इमर्ज हो जाता है. एंड on one side, in Hyderabad, there was the Nizam's grandson, Muzaffar Jung, and Muzaffar Jung's uncle, Chacha ji, Nasir Jung. So these emerged as rival claimants to the throne of Hyderabad. And on the other hand, in Arcot was the capital city of Karnataka. एक नवाब ऑलरेडी है, कौन? अनवरुद्दीन. ठीक है, अनवरुद्दीन. The French propped up a rival against him. क्या नाम था इसका? चंदा साहेब. तो French supported these two, मुजफ्फर जंग एंड चंदा साहेब. तो नासिर जंग और अनवरुद्दीन को किसका सपोर्ट मिलेगा? इंग्लिश का. समझ आया ये? नाउ initially the war went swimmingly for the French and they secured decisive victories against the English on both fronts. So in 1749, in the famous Battle of Ambur, the French defeated the English in Carnatic and साथ में Anwaruddin was eliminated in this battle. ठीक है, तो Anwaruddin died. And following this, नया नवाब कर्नाटक का कौन बन जाएगा? चंदा साहेब बन जाएगा. Similarly, the French were also able to expel Nasir Jung and place Muzaffar Jung on the throne. So in the initial stage, who appeared to be winning this war? The French appeared to be winning this in a one-sided manner. Were the English going to stay silent? No. So the English raised a powerful army at Madras commanded by Robert Clive, and in 1751 they laid siege to Arcot. ठीक है, तो another famous battle was the siege of Arcot. And following a long siege, Arcot में जो नवाब बैठा हुआ है, क्या नाम है उसका? चंदा साहेब. He decided to come out and fight. And result क्या हुआ? चंदा साहेब was killed. So now, is the throne of Arcot occupied or empty? Empty hai. Who is going to place a ruler here? French or British? British. And they placed a puppet ruler over here. नाम क्या था उसका? मोहम्मद अली वजह. ठीक है, तो मोहम्मद अली was placed as the new Nawab of Karnataka. तो ये जो मैप दिख रहा है, initially at the start of the war, this map was dominated by which side? the French, by the end of this war, half of it is under British control, while there is very tenuous French control on the other half. Okay? Who is going to be blamed by the French government for all these losses? The Governor General. कौन? डुप्ले कि नुकसान भी बहुत ज्यादा हो गया, पैसा बहुत ज्यादा खर्च हो गया, we have nothing to show for it. Therefore, Duplé, is he going to be allowed to continue the fighting further, or will he be recalled? He was recalled. This is the significance of this war. Recall of Duplé. Why is this significant? Because it was Duplé who was almost single-handedly managing the French effort against the English East India Company. He was a person of exceptional capability and extraordinary vision. Once he was removed from the scene, people of lesser caliber replaced him. So will they be able to sustain the fight against an enemy who is growing more and more confident and more powerful? नहीं हो पाएगा. तो after the recall of Duplé, it was as if the French fate in India was already sealed. Now ये war कहाँ पे शुरू हुआ है, इंडिया में या यूरोप में? इंडिया में. तो खत्म कहाँ पे होगा? इंडिया में ही होगा. तो a new treaty had to be signed, Treaty of Pondicherry. And with this, the French were forced to accept the new status quo in Carnatic. ठीक है, वहां पे इंग्लिश इन्फ्लुएंस एस्टैब्लिश हो गया है. क्लियर? नाउ 1757, a global conflict erupts, which would be fought simultaneously on 3 continents: Europe, North America and Asia. कौन सा वॉर? कितने साल चला ये? 7 years. So this was known as the 7 years war between the British and the French. So the context was provided by the 7 years war. 1757 एक और लड़ाई हुई इंडिया में. कौन सी? प्लासी. Following that, the British got hold of the rich resources of Bengal. They also got the territory of Bengal. उसको अपना एक frontier की तरह use कर सकते हैं. And what are they going to use it for? For attacking the French not only from the south, Carnatic, but also from the north, Bengal se. So first the French are going to be expelled from Bengal, and then they are going to be entrapped. Okay? Gradually, the English are going to start marching from Bengal towards the south, liberating the coastline, one fort after the other. And decisive engagement is going to come in 1760 in the form of which battle? Battle of Wandiwash. This was located just on the outskirts of Pondicherry. तो फ्रेंच ने यहाँ पे एक अपना लास्ट रेजिस्टेंस दिया, बट the much more numerically stronger and better equipped British forces under which commander? Aercourt. Sir Aercourt नाम था इसका, right? तो Aercourt defeated the French at Wandiwash. Following this, Pondicherry was also captured, right? And result क्या हुआ इसका? Were the French ever able to recover from this blow? No. So this war, this loss meant the end of French ambitions in India. ठीक है? Now ऐसा नहीं है that French influence completely खत्म हो जाएगा. The French will try to make a comeback by supporting Mysore or later the Sikhs, etc. But they'll never be able to come back to the power that they once used to have. ठीक है? So that is why we are saying that it marked the end of French ambitions. और ये war शुरू कहाँ पे हुआ है? यूरोप में हुआ है, खत्म भी यूरोप में ही होगा. The Treaty of Paris was signed. ठीक है. So these are the important developments related to the Anglo-French wars. Clear? Now, तो हमने देख लिया है कि फैक्टर्स क्या हैं, इंपॉर्टेंट डेवलपमेंट्स क्या हैं. नेक्स्ट वी हैव टू कवर द सिग्निफिकेंस एंड द रीजंस फॉर ब्रिटिश सक्सेस और फ्रेंच फेलियर. दिस विल बी डूइंग इन टुमारोज लेक्चर. ठीक है. एनी डाउट्स? नहीं. ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स? नहीं, foreknowledge of ancient history is not needed for modern Indian history. Whatever is necessary, I'll be relating it to you during the classes itself. You can look at the orientation class, Rajesh. I believe this is the first class that you're attending. So orientation class एक बार देख लीजिए. All these questions can be answered from there. ठीक है. All right then. Thank you for your time.